Yes. Let's get this thing started.
Yeah, let's get it on the road.
Hey, what's going on, people? My name is Luke.
I'm here. I'm Alondra.
And I'm Laura, and I work in the Intercultural Center.
Yeah, all of us technically. All of us technically work for the Office of Multicultural Affairs. If you are listening to this, then this means you are listening to the Office of Multicultural Affairs podcast. Typically, I start these things off with the title, but we've gone through a whole lot trying to find a title that we really think captures the essence of our podcast and what we're trying to do.
And everything that we think of is potential
This
to
is true.
be sued.
Yeah.
Lawsuits.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at the number of podcasts that are out there and how, you think you're creative and then you Google XYZ podcast and find out that someone's been doing that podcast for 5 years. So, but I think we made a decision. And the name of our podcast, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please, $40 in Paris.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, our podcast is called $40 in Paris. So I know you were sitting there thinking, what in the world does $40 in Paris mean? That's part of the point. Maybe someday we'll tell you what it means.
We ain't gonna tell you now.
No. Just know that it has meaning for us. But we'll give you a hint. Occasionally in our podcast, we'll drop slight Easter eggs, little clues and hints that point to the direction or the meaning of our podcast name. And then we'll have a special prize for the first person who can correctly tell us the meaning of $40 in Paris. I think it's pretty dope.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So
Let's
cool.
go for it.
Yeah.
So the structure of this podcast is you will have multiple hosts. So right now it's Alondra and Laura, myself. Occasionally we'll have Megan Pugh, who's the assistant director. She'll come in and she'll facilitate sometimes. We'll also occasionally do some interviews. But the idea behind this is just talk about some topics, things that are going on right now from our perspective. So, cool. So the article, we all read an article. It was on what's called cancel culture. What do y'all think about that?
Well, I think first it would be a good idea to give a definition for what cancel culture is, and I think it's essentially writing off problematic people we see as problematic. Sort of like a witch hunt almost. Which I think can lead into possibly the echo chamber effect, where we just all end up sitting around agreeing with each other because people are afraid to step forward and present opinions that might be different.
And it really it sort of hinders someone's own process of just thinking for themselves, because you're constantly agreeing with something. You're being fed stuff to you, and then you're oh, do I agree with this? Do I not agree with this? And you can't really ever think for yourself, I guess. So
Say more.
I don't know. I feel on Twitter or something, people are always calling people out, and then I don't know, doing stuff for just retweets and attention, and I don't know how I feel about all of it.
It seems very competitive.
Yeah.
There's this race to be the right person.
Yeah.
And so as soon as someone says something attempting to maybe make a point, there's this race to see who's going to be able to pick apart that argument first, and then oh, but you didn't think about this, or oh, you didn't do this, but what about this?
This scenario.
Yeah, and it's not about actually elucidating a concept. It's about beating everyone else to the punch so that you sound smarter.
Yes. And then ultimately, whatever the original point was, it in many ways it kind of gets lost. So it does a great job of kind of derailing the original conversation, because it just takes these legs and goes in these very different directions than what it started with.
Well, maybe we should talk about an example, Gabby Douglas.
Oh yeah.
And her comment. Apparently, she said something about victim blaming by telling women that it's their responsibility to dress modestly and with class and run the risk of attracting the wrong crowd. And immediately, people stopped thinking about her because of her athletic ability. It immediately became a huge political topic, and people were basically just rushing in to just shame her for everything from her hair to what she was wearing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. It's this topic comes out, someone has an opinion on it, or they say something about it, that I think, there's a lot of people who would disagree with what was said, but there's never like a point where folks actually stop and go like, oh, like why would this person be saying this? Like what's behind this? Like is there some type of life experience that may be, you know, feeding into why they are seeing things the way they're seeing it or why they're making this comment? They immediately just jump in and, as you said, just kind of start attacking people. And then we find out later that she was actually one of the folks who was abused by Larry Nassar.
Right.
Who just got 140 years, up to 140 years.
Oh, really?
Like, it was like 150 or something.
Yeah, we won't be seeing him again.
Justice
Yeah.
served.
Yeah.
Right. I think people sort of are so ready and so on edge to defend what they believe in these days because everybody wants to be well-versed politically, and I think that's great, but it can sometimes turn into almost a reverse hatred, especially if you don't gather context first.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest things is that there typically doesn't seem to be like this point where we don't do a good job of actually like
discussing.
Well, discussing and just like the basic kind of research. I don't think that's like we have a Google culture. Like the Google culture is like, let me just put something into the Google search engine real quick. The first thing that comes up, I'm gonna read up, and unfortunately, it's probably Wikipedia. So I'm gonna read a quick, and I'm not even gonna actually read Wikipedia, right?
Read like the first intro paragraph.
I'm gonna read the top section, right? It's not like I'm going to the very end and like verifying like the links that are there, citations. No, not doing any of that. I am just looking at the first part of it. I come up with a conclusion, and then okay, I'm ready to run with it. As opposed to like, there's a point where, you know, you didn't have Google. You know, you actually had to research. I was having a conversation with someone about that. It's like, man, like, we really can just find out the answer to just about anything with a Google search. Like, there was a point where it's like you had to open an encyclopedia.
Go to a library, check out an old newspaper.
Yeah.
Times have changed. Well, if we could go back to the line of conversation about Gabby Douglas.
Okay.
If we're talking about witch hunting famous athletes, did you guys ever see I, Tonya? Came out December of last year.
No, I didn't.
Well, did you know about the Tonya Harding's case in
Oh,
1990?
yeah.
Right.
Yes, I remember that.
Well, I think you'll find this interesting because she quickly went to being one of the most loved people in America to one of the most hated people in America. And basically what I knew about the case before I watched the movie was that she was an amazing, amazing ice skater. She was going to go on to the Olympics, and her boyfriend, who she was sort of on and off with because he was extremely abusive.
Jeff Gillooly.
Yes, yes,
Gillooly.
you know this one. Well, first she received a death threat. Someone said that if she went out on the ice, she was going to get a bullet in the back. And so her boyfriend decided to turn that around and also intimidate her competition. I think her name's Natalie?
Nancy Kerrigan.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I thought was that her boyfriend went and broke her leg. But if you watch the movie, the original plan that her boyfriend made was for he hired someone to send her hate mail to throw her off so that she wouldn't be as competitive. But somehow the wires got crossed, and the guys that had to do it actually ended up breaking her knee, which would require a lot of physical therapy.
Yeah, usually it's hard to skate after you've been hit in the knee with a crowbar.
After you've been whacked, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was actually a baton, but in any case,
okay, gotcha.
she was badly injured, and the reason that Tonya was under so much fire is because she admitted in an interview that she had some sort of idea that her boyfriend was planning something. But in the movie, it's interesting because in the movie she's almost like an anti-hero because you don't instinctively want to like her because she's so angry all the time.
Yes.
But it shows her to be very withdrawn from whatever plan they had against her competition, and so it actually cast her in a very sympathetic light. And one of the lines that really stuck out to me, she was talking to one of the judges because she knew she was an amazing skater, but she kept not getting top scores, and she was like, "Why can't it just be about the skating?" Which I thought that was interesting. People did not necessarily know the whole story, but they had already crossed her out as a person. She was so hated.
It's really interesting because I remember that, I'm not telling my age, but I remember that happening, and it very much was kind of like there was a media element to it, where it's like you had these individuals who were very much kind of like pitted against each other. And so Tonya is actually from Oregon. I just moved from Oregon, for those of you who don't know. So I know people who know her. And
really?
Who have met her. Yes. Know people who know her
wild.
who have met her. Interesting stories. She actually used to practice ice skating in the mall.
Did she?
Yeah. So anyway, like there was, I'm saying that to say there was this narrative really about her of being kind of like more of like a working class. It was a classism thing that was.
Well, they were
going on,
poor.
right? Yeah, like this kind of poor.
Her dad left.
Yeah, as opposed, and then they pitted that against like the Nancy Kerrigan character, or not character, but Nancy Kerrigan, right, who is kind of like America's princess,
America's sweetheart.
Yeah, and so I'm saying that to say there's a huge kind of, the media played like a huge role in people looking at Tanya in that particular way. That's not like defending Tanya or bashing Nancy, but there's some context behind that. Right? That it wasn't just about the skating, right?
It was never just about the skating. And that's why that line really caught my attention. It was like an outcry from her because she had a very difficult life. Her mother was extremely abusive. Her mom said that she skated best when she was angry, and so her mom would purposefully, at least according to the mockumentary, because it is just a mockumentary, based on factual interviews though. And if you go and you listen to the actual interviews, they will blow your mind. She had a previous quote-unquote bodyguard who would claim to being connected to people all over the world, intelligence agencies all over the world. And these were false claims, and everybody knew that, but he still stuck to it. And so it's just like all these like characters in her life. I mean, of course they made a movie about it.
It's funny because it's almost like it's like a Farrelly Brothers film, or like, was it Farrelly? Yeah, Farrelly Brothers film. Like it's like Fargo. Like, have you ever seen that? You know, it reminds me of a movie like that, or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So if you're familiar with the Farrelly Brothers, like,
oh yeah, I see what you mean.
So
what is this movie called again?
I, Tonya, and I
Okay.
really recommend it. It got great reviews. It gives this person who was really hated for a really long time sort of a very sympathetic light. It portrays her as a fighter, because ultimately what she did, she was ultimately banned from skating ever again. Skating was her life. It was like the only thing she had going for her. And so one of the most touching scenes in the movie is when she's in court and the judge tells her she's never allowed to skate again, and you can just see her crumble.
Oh yeah, I do remember. It's not the Farrelly Brothers; it's the Coen Brothers. I was trying to remember who it was. Yeah, Farrelly's is Something About Mary, and it's a little more comedic. Coen Brothers is a little more like darker.
Oh yeah, it's definitely dark humor.
Yeah. So it reminds me of like Lebowski. You know, it just has those like, you have these really kind of eccentric characters that you're like, is this like a real person?
Well, they were real people. That's the thing.
Well, yeah, they are, but it's like you could easily write this into a movie. And it's,
Her mom would conduct interviews with her little parakeet just sitting on her shoulder. It was hilarious.
And you know what? Like, because they're from that kind of Portland area, that doesn't surprise me. Yes. If you've ever been to Portland, like walking around and seeing someone with a parakeet on their shoulders, like Tuesday in the Pearl. Yeah. Is this the movie with Margot Robbie, or is this like you said it was a mockumentary?
Yeah, it's like a mockumentary. Gotcha. It came out in December of last year, I think.
This is it.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, that's Margot Robbie.
It hasn't been around long.
Oh, okay, got you. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, not that I wasn't before, but yeah, I definitely want to check this out. Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, it was presented as sort of a dark comedy, but also a commentary on sports, because she was one of America's biggest athletes. She was the first American woman to complete the triple axel.
Oh,
wow.
Which, if you watch videos of that, it's pretty incredible. You basically have to throw your middle fingers at gravity and just sort of go for it.
Nice. There's something that you said earlier, though, like, you know, kind of this, like, now, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're able to kind of look back on this, and there's, like, some humor there, and we're able to look at her, like, a little more sympathetically.
Oh, yeah.
Time has the ability to do that. Like, it's fascinating, right? And that's also why kind of cancel culture can be really detrimental, because it's so fleeting, right? We get up in arms and we make these decisions and we make these comments because we're so wrapped up in the here and now, and we're not thinking about the fact that, like, in a year or 5 years or like 20 years, like, these may be things that are like so insignificant, and we're like, why were we ever that up in arms about it? Or,
right.
You know,
well, it's sort of a bandwagon effect.
It very much is.
And sometimes I fall into that trap where I will not be well versed in a subject, but I'll listen to what other people are saying, and I assume they know what they're talking about, so I'll like jump on board. And I've never like pursued or bullied anyone because of that, but like mentally it is something I've done.
Yeah. And part of that, I think, is because, like, you know, you're surrounding yourself with people who, like, you know, like, we want to be affirmed. And so if someone is saying something that falls in line with, like, your worldview and your belief, then it makes you feel good because there's, like, this feeling like, oh, yeah, I'm right in what I think.
Yeah, and it goes, like, to the extent that it can, like, damage somebody's career or
It
something.
ruined her.
And then, but it's such a quick thing that just happens, and then it's gone, and we forget about it, and then, but in reality, it leaves, like, a lasting effect on these people.
Well, she's no longer, in retrospect, until this movie came out anyway, she's no longer the first woman to complete the triple axel. She was the woman whose boyfriend whacked her competition.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, to think about. I mean, this happened in, like, what, the mid-90s?
It was mid-90s, early 90s.
Yeah, so this happened in the mid-90s where the media very much had a role in, you know, crafting this narrative. Now it's the internet. And if you didn't know, the internet is undefeated.
Yeah.
Like, no one beats the internet. So just imagine if something like this happened now.
Yeah.
Oof.
I was watching I take this mass communications class, and we had to watch a documentary for it about the New York Times and, like, how the internet really affected traditional news media outlets. And like, seeing that, it was in 2010 when it was shot, and, like, seeing that documentary compared to, like, now and, like, 2018. I was about to say 2017. No, we're not in 2017 anymore. Yeah. Compared to now, it's amazing, like, the difference that like, how quickly, like, things have gained traction, like social media and, like, news, and how, like, quickly that spreads and how immediate it is. And it really got to me because it like, showed the old Twitter logo. And it was, like, the blue Twitter with, like, in the, like, the white outline on it, and it was just, like, it was old. I was like, wow, we really out here.
Well, it's interesting because people will use social media as a news base.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I've done it myself many times.
Yeah, every morning I wake up and I look on, like, it's the quickest and fastest way to get, like, what happened in the time that I was asleep. Like, what happened, like, during that time. I want to know, and, like, I'll look it up later.
Yeah.
For more reliable news sources.
Especially if you're going to give your own opinion. Because
Yeah.
nobody wants to make a Facebook status and have everyone be like, well, did you check your facts? So at least that's what I do.
Even though no one else did.
Yeah. And that's the thing about it. It's, like, it's so easy because no one wants to go to, like, the New York Times website and read all these long, complicated articles
Too
that
dense.
like, yeah, they're
Fake
dense.
news.
They have a lot of information that, like, you may or may not, like, really understand. But with, like, social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, or anything, it's easy. It's understandable to, like, a college kid or, like, a high school student. It's in your language that you know and, like, understand.
And people will even, like, you know, I know people who read the comments and not the article.
Yeah.
Like, an article is posted on Facebook and they're responding to comments as opposed to I'm like, read the article
Yeah.
at least.
Comments is the most entertaining part.
Yeah, if you're gonna comment, you have to, like, read.
My
something.
thing is never read the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to see the worst of humanity,
Go look at YouTube comments.
The dregs.
like, read comments.
Yeah,
like, watch
really.
like read an article, watch a YouTube like controversial YouTube video, and then read the comments. And you see the worst parts of humanity.
Yes.
But it's also fascinating, like, when you, like, one of the things that you said about the first thing you do is kind of, like, go on your phone and start looking at information, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this it's this interesting thing if you think about, like, just our society and how that's changed, right? There is a point where people got up in the morning and, like, read the morning newspaper, right? You sit down and you read the paper, and
Different era.
yeah, and then, like, there's the paper, and then you go to work, and then you come back from work, and then there's the news, like, the official news, right? So it's not better, it's not worse, it just is. But you had, like, very limited access to information, and the good part of that is, like, it was curated, right? There wasn't fake news, quote unquote. Now, we know that there's some things that were problematic, but the idea is that if something was being distributed it was something that had to have been researched. Like,
Right.
it had to have been vetted. Like, you had to send it to an editor, and an editor had to go like, no, this isn't right, or have you checked your sources, right? So that's the good part of it. The bad part is that it has a gatekeeper effect, right? Those in power are the ones who are able to craft, like, what information is able to go out. There's also bias that comes along with that, right? And so there's a narrative that can be created about different groups of people that can be pushed out. So that's the bad part of it.
Right, because as amazing as it is to have the World Wide Web, it's important to find the sources that are not biased.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not even gaining any traction anyway.
And now you have no gatekeeper. So,
So we're just
like,
everywhere.
so now I can go onto my computer, type a bunch of nothingness, save it as a PDF, and add in some pictures,
Yeah.
like, and then post that, and like, I've published it. It's now official, and someone will cite that as a source.
What's amazing is people take the time to do that.
Yeah, what is going on with your life to where that's what you're? That's
The people
what you're
who go
doing.
in and like edit Wikipedia articles.
Yeah, but I mean, so like that's the bad part. I mean, like, yes, the good part is like anyone can be provide information, right? There's multiple narratives that can now be introduced into an argument. The bad part is that sometimes you have people who just put out blatantly false information for their own entertainment, and
Yeah.
that derails the conversation.
Entirely.
Not
Well, there are
happening.
some things that they really don't want you to look at. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard about
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
Someone told me
Don't
once.
Google that.
Someone
So-
told me once that if you did, you'd automatically get put on some kind of list within the federal government.
Never heard of
So
that
don't know
before.
if that's true. Don't know if that's true, but there are plenty of things we have talked about on here that I would say, hey, Google that, find out more information. I don't know much about net neutrality, so I would say Google net neutrality, find out more
Yes,
about
please
it.
do.
I would say the whole Tanya Harding thing, definitely Google that, find out more about it. Cancel culture, look into it, find out more about it. Don't Google whatever you do, just take our word for it. Just don't
I can already
Google
hear
that
the
one.
numbers rise as people are inspired to look it
Yes,
up.
please don't do that. Yes, and I don't mean that in a way to like say it just so that you do it. I'm saying like seriously, don't look that up. I would appreciate.
Yeah,
it if
look
you
out for
did.
yourself.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's nothing you need to see. Just ask people about it.
Just in case it's true. Actually, don't ask a lot. Don't go around asking strangers.
Not
about-
strangers.
Yes, or the police. Yeah, that's a good way to get unwanted attention. We don't want you to do that.
We
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have even talked about it.
We probably shouldn't. Let's just edit
We're
that
gonna
out.
try to get it out, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's edit that part out.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. You don't want to be like. How would you feel to know that the person on your hall is googling? That's not. It's not gonna make you feel comfortable.
No, because it's well, I won't go into it.
Yeah.
I know more than I should.
Yeah, this is what we're gonna do. When we edit this, we're just gonna beep out. We're gonna beep it out. So all they're here is like,
Don't Google.
yeah. I think that's what we need to do this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We can just also beep out just like a non-censored word that doesn't actually need to be censored.
Let's beep out
Confuse
and.
it, yeah.
Like what is it? Jimmy Kimmel's like This Week in Needless
Like the
Censorship.
unnecessary censorship.
Yes,
yeah.
there you go. Is
I
it
love
Jimmy
those.
Kimmel or
It's
Fallon?
Jimmy Kimmel,
Okay,
I'm pretty
gotcha.
sure, yeah.
I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
man.
those.
Yeah, we'll have to have a segment where we do that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
that would be-
absolutely.
Yes, that would be amazing.
So, any other things y'all wanted to talk about today?
I think we talked about the big ones.
Yeah.
I think it's just if we're gonna leave them with anything, don't be afraid to bring up topics that other people might disagree with you on, as long as everything is presented in a respectful context. If we don't have new conversations with new people, we definitely do run the risk of falling in the trap of the echo chamber effect, where we're all just sitting around agreeing with
Yeah.
each other, which can be great, but some dialogues need to be started.
Yeah. Let's try not to like immediately hit the cancel button whenever we're, scrolling through social media and figuring out the next person we can cancel. Let's think about things and I don't know. Agree to disagree.
Or sit down with that person instead of attacking them and ask them why they think what they think.
Yeah. There's no point in always writing off someone that you don't completely agree with. And the truth of the matter is, if we sit down long enough with an individual and actually have a meaningful conversation, there are going to be some things that we disagree on. So, Yeah, and I think the fact that Alondra's computer right now is overheating
Yes.
might mean it's time for us to go.
Well, I think in the future we should come out with some sort of some tagline to say at the end of each broadcast.
We should.
We should.
Yeah, we should think about that, and hopefully it won't take us as long to come up with that as it did
With the title.
with the title. Yeah. So we're gonna be back. We're gonna try to do this every 2 weeks or so, hopefully on Mondays. But we are gonna be engaging with folks hopefully on social media. So you will see us on Facebook. You're gonna say something.
Yeah, follow us. We have like a Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere.
What's our stuff
I'm
so
everywhere.
people can find us?
Yeah, Instagram is Multicultural UNCA, and Twitter is Diversity UNCA, and Facebook, just look up Multicultural Affairs at UNCA, and we're good. Yeah.
And come see us. We'd be
Yes.
happy to have you.
Yeah,
Come
we're
see us.
Highsmith 114. Like, roll up.
Please.
No, actually, I'm gonna say that differently. Stop by, because roll up has a different connotation.
Yeah.
I don't want you to do that.
Don't roll up.
We'll beat that one out too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like stop by to see us. Everyone doesn't speak slang. Yeah. We'll holler at y'all.
Yeah.
Over and out.
Thank you for listening.